What's up, guys? So I just got the DJI AIR 2S, and I put up a video about 3 days ago about it, and I had a few people DMing me asking me how I got the colors in that video. Today I'm going to show you guys how you can color grade your footage to look really similar to what I got there. Just disclaimer, I am by no means great at color grading. This is just my method of color grading. If you guys know a better way of doing it, please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear how you guys color grade your footage, but I'm gonna show you how you guys can get the look that I achieved in that video. Okay, so before we even jump into Premiere, it all starts in camera, or on your drone, I guess. So in camera, there are two things that we're gonna change, okay? If you're already paying attention to your histogram and you're already shooting in D-Log, then you're good to go and you can skip to this timestamp right here, and that's when I'll get straight to the color grading. But if you're not already shooting in D-Log and paying attention to your histogram, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at that now, and I'll show you what to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump straight into the DJI Fly app. You see right here, I have it already connected to my drone and the controller, and we're looking through exactly what the drone is seeing. Okay, so there's two settings that we're gonna wanna change here, okay? We're gonna go ahead up to the top right corner, hit those three dots, and then here it brings us to the options menu. What we're gonna do here, we're gonna go ahead and hit camera up in the middle there, and you'll see here under video, we're recording in MP4, our color is normal, and our coding format is H.264. So the one thing that we're gonna wanna change here is to shoot in D-Log. So I'm gonna go ahead and select D-Log here. All right, now you see everything here gets really grayed out. So this is something that I recommend turning on, is up here, turn on Color Display Assist. So that just adds in a lot of the contrast and saturation to kind of see what the end footage would look like after you apply like a Rec 709 LUT. All right, so the one other thing we're gonna add, we're gonna go back up here into the up into the settings, and then we're gonna scroll down till we see under general, histogram. We're gonna wanna make sure we have histogram enabled. And if you would like, you can turn on overexposure warning as well. That gives us the zebras and the histogram to look at. Here in the top corners, you see that we're getting the overexposure warnings. Lower the shutter speed here, you'll see that those just grow and grow. So that's what the overexposure warning is. It shows zebras where it's overexposed and where the highlights are clipping. So you want to avoid that. You want to try to get as much detail as you can. So that's just nice to have that warning there. And then here, you'll also see that we have the histogram here that I'm dragging around. So I like to put this right here, just so I can see when I'm overexposed, because when it's in bright daylight, it's hard to tell your exposure by just looking at the screen here. So having that thing to look at that isn't really changed by the brightness of your screen, it tells you exactly what your exposure is and exactly what you need to do to get it to the right spot. All right, so now that we've done that, that's everything you need to do to your drone to get the best footage to record with. So now all you need to do is just record some footage and bring it into Premiere. Okay guys, so let's jump straight into Adobe Premiere now. So here you'll see we have Premiere open and everything. We have these three shots here down in the corner. We have this one shot where I kind of swoop in towards the boat. It's really open, you have a lot of bluish water. It's really beautiful. Here we have one going over the dirt road as we're panning down. Really love the motion blur here because we're getting a lower shot there. And then you have another one with a lot of green and a lot of blue water there as well. So as you see, since these are all kind of a grayish, mushy color, they're very, very low contrast. That's because we were shooting in that D-Log profile. All right, so now that we have all three of these put together, we're gonna go ahead and go up to this color tab up here. Here, you'll see that we have our Lumetri color panel open over here. We're gonna be using that a lot. And right over here, we're gonna wanna click on our Lumetri Scopes. Now you see here that everything is kind of in the middle here. Nothing's reaching 0 and not a lot is reaching the peak 100 here. That's because we were shooting in that log profile that's kind of crushing down both the highlights and the shadows to make it as flat as possible. The first thing that we're gonna need to do here is to go ahead and color correct and re-add in a lot of that contrast and saturation. So to do that, there are multiple ways we could do this. Some people like to do it through the basic correction here. They like to add in the contrast, highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks here. And a lot of other people like to do it in curves. So that's what we're gonna do here. Okay, so now that we're here in the curves panel, we're gonna go ahead and down around this area right here, we're gonna go ahead and click and drag. And as you see, our Lumetri Scopes, the bottom area around 10 is going lower and lower. So we're going to go ahead and drag that around. Let's see. There looks about good. So we're getting things to where they would be really close to touching the 0 line here. You don't want to go below because at that point you're losing a ton of detail. You're clipping the blacks. You don't want to clip the blacks. You want to preserve as much detail as you can in the shadows. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing with the highlights. Go ahead and pull those up here. Not quite to where they're peaking, above 100, but you want to have them down here to where you're still getting most of that dynamic range. That looks about good there. So now with just those two things done, you see if we disable and enable this, we have a much higher contrast image now. I always like to get kind of a low contrast look. That's my preferred look. I don't like super contrasty stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring up the blacks just slightly here. About there so that we're getting a lot of that visible detail in the shadows. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead into basic correction and we're gonna go ahead and tweak everything that we would need to tweak here. So if our white balance is off, we're gonna go ahead and change that here, which I think it is pretty good for where we would need it here in the video. This was kind of a sunset area. So the sun is hitting those trees directly. That's what's causing them to be that orange. And we can go ahead and tweak, let's see, the shadows here. If we do need to bring them down, we can. I'm gonna bring them down slightly. Maybe bring up the whites a touch. And honestly, I think that looks really, really good. And then here, since we shot in that D-log, it's desaturating our image. So we're gonna go ahead and up it to about 120, I would say is the max that you would ever wanna go when shooting D-log. But I'm gonna go ahead and sit around 112. This looks about good here. So again, if we go ahead and toggle on and off the Lumetri colors here, we're seeing that we changed the image a ton and we're getting a way nicer image now. It's way less barf and looks way better. So now that that is done, we can do the same thing to our other videos. So let's go ahead and repeat the process here. So we're gonna go ahead and go into the curves, bring down the shadow to where they're just touching 0, and bring up the highlights. Maybe bring up the shadows just a touch. And we can go ahead and change the white balance if needed. And then adding saturation once again. And then same thing for the last one. We're gonna go ahead and bring down our shadows, move up our highlights, and increase the saturation. All right, and now you see with just these small adjustments made, we have a way cleaner and way better looking image. And if you want to keep it this way to make it look the most natural, you can export it as is right now and you would still have a very great looking video. But at this part of the video is when we get to be a bit more creative with the style that we're going for. And this is where we can tweak a lot of the colors after we have done all of the color correction. Now we can move on to the color grading section of the video. So we're gonna go ahead down here, we're gonna click on this new item, we're gonna go ahead and select adjustment layer. Now you can go ahead and make sure it's the resolution of the comp that you're working in. We're gonna go and hit OK. And we're gonna drag that adjustment layer into our timeline. So now we're gonna head back into the Lumetri color panel, but first we wanna make sure that we selected the adjustment layer so that we're editing the colors of the adjustment layer rather than editing the clips individually, so that the adjustment layer, we only have to edit this once to span across all 3 clips rather than having to make these colors change for each clip individually. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna go ahead and jump in and do here is head down to the curves panel right here. So now this is where we were making the adjustments earlier, but here we have all of these other ones that we're gonna go ahead and mess around with. So we have hue versus saturation. This is where we can change the saturation of specific hues. So say we want the greens over here to be very desaturated and gray. What we can do, we can go ahead and select the eyedropper here, select a green there, and you see it automatically selects over here in hue versus saturation. And we can go ahead and drag down to desaturate the greens or drag up to add more saturation. So if we desaturate the greens, you see that we have a very gray image, and that's cool if that's the style you're going for. You never want to go full on all the way desaturated, but if you do want to make a slight tweak to them, maybe slightly desaturate them, this is where you would want to do that. We're gonna leave the greens for right now, but we're gonna go ahead and go down to hue versus hue, and this is where you can change the hue of specific hues. Kind of confusing, I know, but if we go ahead here, select the eyedropper again, let's select the blue of the sky up here. All right, so it selects it right here for us, and we can change the hue of the sky by dragging down or up. So if we drag all the way down, you see that the sky is now a crazy orangish pink color. If you want it to look like it's a sunset, there you go. That's all you need to do. Just kidding. That's way too intense. Don't do that. That's just an example. If you want to change the greens again, you can go ahead and change the color of the greens to a blue. You can change the greens to a blue and make it look like you're an avatar. This is where you really get to be creative. Now, going into this blindly, it's kind of hard to come up with a style of your own. So what I would recommend doing is look at a bunch of other creators like Sam Colder, Peter McKinnon, Matty Hipoya, and see the kind of colors that they're putting in their videos and see how you can replicate that in your own videos. Lastly, the other thing that we would be changing is hue versus Luma. So if you want to change the brightness of a specific hue, you can do that here as well. So let's go ahead and select the greens again. If we drag down, that's darkening the greens. If we drag up, that's brightening the greens. And we can go ahead and widen the selection area here as well by just widening those. And you see that we're selecting way more of the colors. We're getting a lot more red and green in there. We can go ahead and even add way more green. And there you see that we're darkening a ton of the image there. All right, but that looks terrible, so we're leaving that alone. So what I did in the previous video, I changed the hue of the sky to more of a tealish color. Here you see it's pretty blue. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and click up in the sky with our eyedropper tool. We're gonna widen the selection just very slightly. We're gonna go ahead and drag up to the slightly teal area. All right, so we're dragging up and you see that we now have a lot more of a teal color. So if I go and turn that on and off, you see that it's turning our blue sky into a bluish teal. And that's something that I definitely really like. You don't want to go too crazy with it. In color grading, you want to be very, very subtle with the changes you're making, or else it looks pretty bad. All right, so now with that change done, we're gonna go ahead and select our greens here. We're gonna go ahead and widen the selection so we're getting all of those trees rather than that one color I specifically selected. We're gonna go ahead and change this to more of an orange look. So just very, very slightly up. So you see here on the curves, we barely changed that at all, and it's giving us much more of a dramatic look. So by simply turning this on and off, look at that difference that it's making. We're doing much more of a stylized look with just those tiny little tweaks. Let's go ahead and make this bigger so we can kind of see it a little better. So yeah, so the colors here are just dramatically changed. We're removing a lot of the green, turning it into that orange color, and the blue is now a very nice color. The one thing I don't like here in the background, it looks like we have a little bit of like a purpley hue, and that's something I really don't like. So I'm gonna go ahead and select that back there. We're gonna go ahead and change that more towards a red color. I think that looks a bit better there. It looks way better, way more cinematic. And the nice thing about working on an adjustment layer is that when we go over to our next clip, the grade is automatically applied. So let's go ahead and toggle on and off our adjustment layer there, and you see that we are changing the colors of the image. Here's what it looks like before and after. Before, after. Now, if you think there's a bit too much green in there still, we can go ahead and drag over that green slider, make the selection a little wider, and just drag it up slightly more. And there you go. So now all three of these clips have been graded, and here you can continue to tweak it upon here. So let's go ahead and look at a quick before and after. I think this grade is slightly more intense than the one I had in the video, but it's very, very similar. Thanks for watching, guys, for this super quick tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want any more content really similar to this, let me know in the comments down below, and I would really love to hear what you guys have to say and maybe even make something that you guys would request. So yeah, thanks again, guys. You guys have a great day. As always, I'm gonna make some coffee in my different clothing because I totally filmed that coffee scene like in the next 10 minutes. No, I didn't. It was actually this morning. But yeah, coffee.
Very, very happy day.
If you watch any Peter McKinnon, you probably know what that owl is. We're making some delicious coffee today.